What's going on, traders? Some key things we want to go over in this video. I think you guys are going to be really interested in what I have to say here. Tomorrow is rate cuts. Tomorrow is the big day that everyone is anticipating. And so I want to give you guys an idea on what we could be looking at here. And so in my last video, I told you guys that I'm pretty bullish for today. I think we're going to see more upside. Granted, I did not expect the SPY to go absolutely ballistic and start hitting 566, which is new highs, but we got there, okay? And then we pretty much gave it back. And so, like I said in the last video, usually the initial move heading into any type of Jerome Powell event, FOMC, is usually the wrong move. Okay. Now, this isn't 100% guaranteed, but at least majority of the time, from my experience, you usually get some type of initial rally or even initial sell-off, whatever direction the market decides to go heading into the event. And then you get the opposite effect either the next day or the next few days. And so we do know September is notoriously bearish, at least for the last few weeks. But we definitely know that October is even more bearish than September. In fact, historically, the VIX peaks in October. So I still think a huge drop is coming, especially given with how much upside we've seen without really any cool down. I guess you can consider today and even yesterday a cool down. But I really want to point some things out to you guys. So we're looking at the NQ, right? And we broke above this trend. And in case you guys are, doubting the trend line that I draw or anything, or maybe you think it's off or whatever the case may be, you guys can see it here. We bounced here multiple times. We consolidated, we bounced up, or we tried to rally up, and then we broke down. We broke back above the trend. We broke down once again. And now we are pretty much mounted right back above that trend. And we are pretty much showing indecisiveness across the market, or at least on the tech side of the market when we're talking about the NQ. And mind you, this is the daily time frame. And so it's clear that investors are not sure on what direction to go. They seem to be leaning more bullish, if anything, but it's still a lot of uncertainty. But here's where things get interesting. So we look at the ES. All right. We look at the ES, and I just want you guys to keep this in mind. We're looking at a symmetrical triangle here. It looks great, and we gapped up, right? And I don't want you guys to focus too much on this, but I just want you guys to keep this part in mind. So remember this gap up. We're on the daily time frame on the ES, and just remember that we're gapping up here. But here's where things are just really, really weird, right? We look at the SPY. And I told you guys about this ascending triangle in the last video, right? Where you have your higher low here, you have another higher, you have a low here, higher low here, and then you have a flat top, thus making this ascending triangle. It's not yet confirmed until you break out, of course, right? And if you guys notice, I got rid of the fair value gaps for this particular video. We'll talk about that another time, but I just really want you guys to focus on what I'm about to say here. If I'm an experienced trader, okay, you can consider me an experienced trader. I'm just a trader. Okay. This looks too obvious. Like for the average trader, this looks way too obvious. This move right here seems so obvious in my opinion. And what I mean by that is it looks like this could be a bear trap. I think bears possibly could have got trapped in this area here. And again, you start doing the math. We're really going to start doing some math here. Again, we have the ES with a gap, right? We gapped up. And so if I'm looking for confirmation for downside, right? If I'm looking to enter puts on the spot, well, my first confirmation is okay, ES has a gap to the downside that possibly needs to get filled, right? And then SPY, it rejected its new highs. It rejected all-time highs at around 566.5, and then it closed below the supply and demand zone. It just seems a little too obvious, right? It just looks way too obvious here. And I could be wrong. I can absolutely be wrong. Maybe we just so happen to do one of these moves where we just plummet, start filling these fair value gaps here that we mentioned in the last video, hit the bottom of the ascending triangle at around 550, 548, and then we start, pretty much doing one of these moves and possibly break higher, or we just break down completely. But again, like I said, this seems way too obvious of a short type of move. We look at the triple Qs, and you're seeing pretty much the same thing. Looks way too obvious, right? where we can actually zoom out here so you guys can get like a better idea on what you're looking at. But as you guys can see, we bounced off this trend here. We bounced here, we bounced here, and then we rejected here, we rejected here, and now we're back at this trend again. But what's interesting is that we are closing below both trend lines. Does that make sense? Does it? It just seems way too obvious to want to short this position here. Way too obvious. So we have triple confirmation now, right? And I'm always a believer in confirmation. I'm always going to be a believer in confirmation, but I don't like too obvious. And this just seems too obvious. This seems like an obvious trap here. And I could be wrong. I'd rather be safe than sorry, if anything. And so we're talking about the triple Qs. We talked about the SPY. We had talked about the ES. The NQ, if anything, I would say the NQ isn't much of an obvious move. But if NQ stays above this trend, that will confirm more than ever that we could be looking at a possible bear trap for bears, at least for close of day today. And so something to really, keep in mind here. So real quick, I just want to get this one part out the way. Bitcoin is in a very interesting spot here. Um, very, very interesting spot. So we have a rising three method here, pattern here. Um, you have your bearish candle here, bearish candle here, bearish candle here. Then you have a bullish engulfing candle. If you guys don't know, this is exactly what it will look like on Google Images. So rising three method candlestick looks exactly like that. So Bitcoin might actually break out. I mean, this is clean, guys. Very, very clean. And so if we are talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator for the overall market, or at least the tech side of the market, Bitcoin may break out. I mean, and this again, keep in mind, this is the daily time frame. This is the rising three method candlestick pattern. I mean, it doesn't get any cleaner than this, guys. I mean, look at it. Clean. It looks exactly the same. What do I tell you guys? If it looks like the pattern, assume that it is until proven otherwise. I mean, you can't get any more perfect than that. All right. So if we're talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator and we're talking about the SPY and the triple Qs and the ES looking like obvious short positions, right? Look like they're just trying their best to trap bears, if anything. But then we're talking about Bitcoin showing a really bullish pattern. And mind you, it hasn't broken this trend yet, but I would imagine that this pattern is a sign that Bitcoin wants to break trend. So if Bitcoin can get above 61K, I definitely think we're going to head much higher, at least on Bitcoin. And I would just say for the short term, at least 65K. So that's another thing to add to your list on we could be looking at some type of trap tomorrow. And again, I can be wrong, but I'd rather be safe than sorry because, and I'm just showing you guys this because it just looks so obvious in regards to shorting. And I don't have a bias towards being bullish or bias towards being bearish. If anything, I'd rather the market just drop so we can get cheaper positions because this is insane. I would love some discounts, but regardless, things just look too obvious for bears here. And so when I can't exactly figure out what the market is trying to do, or at least the ETFs and the futures are trying to do, that's when I start looking at the big guys, the big tech stocks, because they will give you a better sign. At least I thought that was the case. So, two stocks that I'm going to get out the way here that are really bothering me, and we mentioned one in the last video, is Apple, right? And so I told you guys that right now it just seems like the triple Qs is pretty much holding Apple hostage here. Where Apple is trying to drop, it seems like it wants to drop. It gets bad news, it had bad iPhone sales, shocker. But it looks like it wants to drop, but the triple Qs and the SPY just continue to go higher, and Apple just can't get lower. Okay, it's slowly trickling down, but it just can't get there. And so, if the market just so happens to rally tomorrow, at least prior to the Fed meeting or after, whatever the case may be, we could look at a gap fill here before we see another sell off. Okay, we could be, right? And so, Apple is a very weak name right now, and granted, is that it's at a very strong support here at around 215. If it breaks below 215, then I definitely think it's going to head lower. And one of my targets is 210 to 0.05 range. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at in regards to Apple. So Apple is one sign that we could be seeing some bearish type move soon. And I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow because again, things are looking too obvious. But my point here in mentioning Apple is where it is. It's at support, guys. It's at support. And like I said, remember what I said, SPY ES and triple Qs looks like obvious shorts. But then you have stocks like Apple that are bouncing off support and could potentially go higher and fill this gap. I don't think Apple is going to like go ballistic and break all-time highs anytime soon, but it's in a very interesting spot here. Now, by all means, Apple could break further down if the news is bad tomorrow. But if we're talking about an initial move to the upside, I think if anything, Apple will want to fill this gap before it decides to go lower. And I still think that's the case. And I definitely think it's going to happen at least in October. Another stock that is really giving me weird signs here is Nvidia, right? I talked about Nvidia being at a weekly fair value gap in the last video. And I don't want to focus too much on fair value gaps in this video. I just want to give you guys an idea on what we're looking at across the board. And one thing I told you guys in the regards to Nvidia is that it's at a weekly fair value gap, but another thing is that it broke below 117. And granted, it's holding 115. I will say that much. But when we're talking about more downside, I would imagine if we do see some type of downside, and I don't think that's going to be the case, at least starting off if we do see more downside, I think Nvidia is just going to simply retest 110. We can probably go as low as about 107, maybe hit the bottom of this, or we hit this the support down here around this area, so which will be exactly at 110. So let's actually map that out so you guys can actually see what I'm talking about here. So right about here is what we're talking about in regards to support in regards to NVIDIA. It's a little bit off, but you guys get the idea. Where we could see a move towards 110, 109 range, and then we start to bounce off that area and start to head higher, at least to about 125, 126 on NVIDIA. All right, so if we do get some type of sell off, and maybe I'm wrong about this being a possible bear trap, across the market, then I imagine this will be the move. So I don't think Nvidia, and I told you guys, I think Nvidia at some point is going to want to see the 90s range, but I don't think it's going to happen. At least I wouldn't say for the month of September, maybe the month of October, if anything. And I'm still bearish on the month of September, at least towards the end of the month. But I don't think Nvidia is quite there yet, or showing signs that it wants to see the 90s. Worst case scenario, we see a bounce off 110. I think that's a beautiful buying opportunity, and then we'll see more upside here. And so my point here is that there's a lot of mixed signals, okay? But Nvidia and Apple is the worries here. Is my point. They're showing that there is potential for downside. Nvidia more than Apple simply because it's below 117. But as long as Nvidia can hold at least 115, we're still I would still say we're pretty much in the clear, at least for potential upside. All right. Now let's get into some other stocks that I'm looking at. So Google. And so Google had a massive sell-off, which I think was an actual overreaction. I really think we saw an overreaction in regards to Google. And so I think, as you guys can see, we have a falling wedge pattern here where we bounced here, we bounced here, we bounced here, rejected all up in this area, and then we finally broke out. Google reclaimed the 200 daily SMA around this candle right here. I don't have it up, but just trust me on this. Google is above the 200 daily SMA on pretty much all time frames, and so I think Google wants to head higher in regards to the overall market. I think Google can see 165, and there's a fair value gap around this area at around 164, 165 range. So I definitely think Google can head much higher. There's also fair value gaps at around 180. And so what's interesting about Google, and we're actually trading Google. We took some profit off Google today in the Discord. What's interesting about Google is anytime we see like some huge sell off, Google pretty much holds its ground. If anything, Google would just sell off on its own if it wants to, and we saw that happen when news came out and the market pretty much had a huge overreaction to it. I think it was an overreaction. Once Google hit about 147, 150, I think that was a beautiful buying opportunity in regards to long term investing or even options play. Unfortunately, I missed it But I think this was a huge overreaction for Google. I genuinely do. And so I think from here, I think Google can go higher. There is a huge fair value gap in around the 180s area. And what's interesting about the Discord here is that, well, you guys just got a glimpse of the long-term investment, so enjoy it while it's there. But what's interesting about the our Discord and the AI bot is that today and even yesterday, the AI bot alerted a 162.5 call with a 506K premium and a 67% AI confidence. And if you're new to the Discord, if you're new in the Discord, anytime you trade the Discord bot or anything like that, you want a premium higher than at least 200K, and then you want a confidence level of above 60%. And majority of the time, if not all the time, these end up being in profit. These type of plays end up being in profit. And so again, this is very interesting because this was alerted today, and then I believe there was another play. These are much bigger plays in this tab here. We had another play. So SOXL had a call today, 33.5, October 11th, 2024. And then I believe yesterday there was another Google call. So yeah, another call came in, 162.5, September 20th expiration. Premium is 806K. And then you have like a rocket ship. So you like to see those rocket ships. That means it's more likely to play out. And so, if you want access to the AI bots, I'm just simply showing you guys that Google is looking really good, and we just have more confirmation. And the point in showing this is that if Google is showing signs that it wants to go up, then is the market really going to drop? Is this further confirming that we are looking at a bear trap into close? But then there's other stocks that are showing weirdness as well. We want to look at Microsoft. And so Microsoft is in a weird spot as well. And so we look at the weekly time frame. I talked about this in another video when we were identifying head and shoulders patterns, right? And look where Microsoft is. We have a shoulder here, head here, and another shoulder here. And then we have our trend line. We bounced here, we bounced here. And this is not to be confused with the neckline. The neckline is actually um, down here. So this will be our neckline. But we have our trend line here, and mind you, this is the weekly time frame, and we pretty much are at the top of or the bottom of this trend line that we marked here. And so Microsoft is in a very interesting position. And so we're getting a lot of mixed signals. We look at a stock like Tesla. Tesla, we go down to a daily time frame, and what do we see? We have an ascending triangle. We have a low here, higher low here, and then we have a flat top. And so I personally think Tesla is going to get to 240 sometime this week, if not next week. I definitely think that's going to happen, if not 250. I think Tesla is going to head higher. But like I'm saying, and I'm trying to get across to you guys, there's a lot of mixed signals, but most of the signals seem to be bullish, if anything, when we're looking at stocks. We talk about IWM, the Russell, right? And so the Russell doesn't make any massive moves without either news or the market supporting it. You do see the Russell do its own thing, but it's usually just a bunch of consolidation. But as you guys can see, we broke above this trend line here on the Russell, and then we pretty much mounted it, and now we are pretty much above it. So someone asked me in the Discord, can Russell see 225? I originally thought it would at least see 220, but now I definitely think it can see 225. And if any news was going to cause that to happen, it will be the rate cut news tomorrow. So overall point here, guys, is as you guys can see, there's a lot of mixed signals. I mean, we can look at SMH real quick. I haven't charted this in a while. This looks insane. Yeah, but SMH is in a weird spot as well. I mean, you guys see it here. This just seems too obvious. We saw the same thing on the spot, right? It just looks way too obvious that we could be looking at downside, or I wouldn't even say look at downside, but it just seems too obvious to want to short this type of position here. This just screams, hey, short me so I can trap you. That's what it's screaming. We look at the SPY, hey, short me so I can trap you. Like it just looks way too obvious. And maybe we do see a sell-off heading into tomorrow. I think that would be a good sign for the bulls short term. If anything, we do see an initial sell-off, and then we get the news, and then we start, rallying the next day or two. but this just screams, hey, short me so I can make you look stupid. Short me so I can make you look stupid. But then when you're looking at stocks like Tesla, you have a ascending triangle here, right? And possibly break out. And then you look at stocks like Google, you have a falling wedge pattern here, and you broke out of the falling wedge. And then you have the AI bot calling calls, like massive orders of calls for Google. And Google, by all means, can do its own thing outside of the market, which is why we're trading it. But still, regardless, if Google does decide to follow the market, and we've seen signs of that today, where Google is actually following the market now, is this a sign that we are going to go higher? And I think it is. You talk about Apple just pretty much sitting at support here. Is this a sign that Apple is going to reverse, fill this gap, and then we start seeing a sell off from there? So there's a lot of signs that's pointing to upside despite what the SPY and the triple Qs are showing, which is looks like just an obvious trap. Bitcoin, once again, you have this rising three method candle pattern that's clear as day, which is a very bullish pattern and is very rare to see, especially when it's this perfect looking. And if we're talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator in regards to the market, is this a sign that we're going to see more upside within the market? So hopefully you guys got the idea here. I still think we're going to see a more upside. If we are going to see more upside, I imagine we're going to head towards that fair value gap at around 20,200. And then from there, it's really tough to say. There's a fair value gap on the triple Qs all the way at the 490s range. So yeah, around 490s, 492, 496, I think is being like the highest where it's at. You guys know my all-time high targets is 510 on the triple Qs, at least for this year. And then for the SPY is 580, and then highest I'm looking at on the SPY is about 600. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Maybe November and December, since November and December are extremely bearish. I mean, not bearish, bullish for election year historically. So I think if any time that was going to happen, I imagine it would be during that time. But that's really all I have for this video, guys. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you want access to the Discord bot or trades, my trades, whatever the case may be, Discord link is in the description below. We do it all. We do long term. We mostly swing trade, but we accidentally day trade sometimes if we're in profit. We do long term investments. You guys got a glimpse of that already, so enjoy it. I'm not gonna re-record this. It is what it is. So enjoy that as well. Get a quick little screenshot. But yeah, Discord link is in the description below. Really appreciate all the support lately. It's been absolutely insane just how much growth we've been seeing. And until the next video, traders, have a good one.